So if you take a high-powered microscope to like a solid oak table, the wood essentially disappears into this giant cloud of molecules, right?
Right. It's mostly just empty space at that level.
Yeah. And then if you take a quantum lens to those molecules, they dissolve even further into just mathematical probabilities.
Which is completely counterintuitive to how we experience the world.
Exactly. So if the physical world isn't actually solid, what exactly are you standing on right now? Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a translated text today that takes 5 seemingly completely unrelated fields: genetics, Kantian philosophy, quantum physics, Buddhism, and biblical theology, and reveals how they're all converging on the exact same monumental question.
And that question is simply, who am I?
Right. And whether you are insanely curious about the universe or you're just trying to make sense of your own place in the world, today's deep dive is going to show you how the search for ultimate truth and the search for yourself might actually be the exact same journey.
It's a fascinating premise.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Think of these 5 disciplines as 5 different people digging a tunnel, but from completely different sides of the mountain. They're using entirely different tools, different languages, and for centuries, they thought they were totally alone in their work. But this text shows that they are all about to break through the rock into the exact same central cavern.
Yeah, and I think that's the core belief here, right? Knowledge is incredibly valuable, but it's the most powerful when we actually connect the dots.
Oh, totally.
Typically, we think of physics, the study of matter, and theology, the study of meaning, as moving in completely opposite directions. But the sources we're looking at today reveal this profound convergence. If you push the hard sciences to their absolute limits, the material bedrock it gives way to something else entirely.
So to answer who am I, the text says we have to start with a physical body, right? Which brings us to our first source discipline, which is modern genetics.
Right. We start with the most tangible anchor we have.
And the text makes this fascinating point about DNA. It focuses on this unbroken chain of cellular division. Despite all our differences in race or language, nationality, culture, human genetic differences are shockingly small.
It's a 99.9% identical genetic makeup across all populations.
Yeah, which is crazy. Every single cell in your body right now is the result of a cell that divided. And that parent cell divided from another one, going back in this literal, unbroken physical chain. We all belong to the exact same biological family.
And what's fascinating here is that long before modern genetics or, the mapping of the human genome, the Bible actually made the exact same claim.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The source text cites the book of Acts, specifically chapter 17.
Okay.
And the Apostle Paul is speaking there, and he states that God made, quote, every nation from one blood or from one lineage. So you have a first century text and modern genetic science using completely different languages to point to the exact same truth.
That humanity has this deep, inescapable connection.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to push back on this just a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
So genetics and biology, they're great at explaining the hardware, right? Like how the cells divide, how the heart beats, how my liver functions.
Right, the mechanics of it all.
Yeah, the mechanics. But I mean, my liver functions using the exact same biological mechanics as your liver. But a liver doesn't wake up and say, hey, I exist.
No, it definitely doesn't.
It doesn't have an existential crisis.
Right.
So biology gives us the hardware, but what is powering the software? How does a collection of unconscious atoms suddenly wake up?
And that is exactly the crucial limitation of purely physical sciences. Biology explains the mechanic beautifully, but it leaves us with this massive unsolved mystery, which is consciousness itself.
The actual experience of being alive.
Precisely. It describes the vehicle, but it can't account for the driver. And that's why the text moves directly from biology into philosophy. Specifically, it brings in the German philosopher Immanuel Kant.
Right, because Kant asks this completely revolutionary question about consciousness.
He really did.
He asks, do we actually see reality exactly as it is? Or are we experiencing it strictly through the structure of our own human consciousness? Are space and time real things out there in the void? Or are they just how our minds format data?
And Kant's conclusion was that we cannot experience the world completely separated from our perception of it. Consciousness isn't just a passive observer sitting in a movie theater watching reality happen.
Right.
It is an inseparable element of the reality experience itself. He drew a hard line between the raw, unfiltered reality of the universe and our human experience of it.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us? It's like we're all wearing virtual reality headsets.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. We can't actually see the base code of the game. The raw reality of a computer is just billions of electrical impulses, just ones and zeros.
Which you can't interact with directly.
Exactly. So the headset, the operating system, translates all those ones and zeros into a usable interface. It gives us colors, sounds, three-dimensional space. Kant is basically arguing that human consciousness is the ultimate operating system.
Yes. And if our consciousness is the operating system shaping how we experience reality, we then have to ask what modern physics says about the nature of that reality itself.
Which takes us from philosophical theories directly into the literal physics of the universe. And honestly, the hard sciences are getting incredibly weird here.
They really are. When you drill down into quantum mechanics, things get very strange, very fast.
The text brings up how, at the quantum level, observation and measurement play this critical role. Like, reality behaves in ways that completely defy common sense.
Yeah.
Before a particle is measured, it exists in this state of probability.
A wave of potential outcomes.
Yeah, it only collapses into a definitive physical state when it actually interacts with something.
Right. And this brings in the von Neumann chain, which the text highlights. The physicist John von Neumann asked, where exactly does this collapse happen? Because if the measuring device is also made of quantum particles...
then it should also be in a state of probability, right?
Exactly. The chain of probability continues all the way up to the scientist's eye, into the optic nerve, and into the brain. Von Neumann posited that the only thing capable of breaking that chain is a non-physical entity.
An observer.
Right, an unsimulated consciousness. Now, the text is careful to clarify this doesn't necessarily mean, consciousness creates the universe like some magic trick.
Right, you can't just think a sports car into existence in your driveway.
Sadly, no. But it definitively proves that reality cannot be explained by a purely mechanical, materialistic structure. The deeper science looks into existence, the deeper and more bizarre the questions become.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Buddhism was actually exploring this exact concept long before modern physics even existed.
Hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Yeah. The text quotes this very famous Buddhist teaching, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. It's not saying the table in front of you doesn't exist, but it's arguing that it doesn't have an independent existence.
The concept of dependent origination, a table is only a table because of the wood, the carpenter, and you, the person observing it. Everything is just this fluid, interdependent web.
But wait, the text says the visible world looks solid, but it's actually incredibly fluid. So if everything around me is fundamentally shifting, and my own body is just this temporary arrangement of atoms, who exactly is the I that is experiencing all this?
And that exact question is what keeps modern philosophers and quantum physicists awake at night.
I bet.
If the physical world isn't the rock-solid foundation of reality we thought it was, we have to look for a completely different starting point. We can't use matter to explain the origin of our consciousness if matter itself is somehow dependent on consciousness.
So we have to transition to a starting point that is completely non-material. Which brings us back to the Bible. The text points out how the Gospel of John begins. It says, "In the beginning was the Word." But the text explains that the English translation kind of strips the weight away. The original Greek word used there is logos.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, logos doesn't just mean spoken language.
It's way more than that.
Much more. It encompasses reason, order, meaning, intelligence. It's the fundamental principle that sustains reality. The Bible is arguing here that the roots of existence are actually found in meaning, not matter. Meaning precedes matter.
Wow. So if the source of everything is meaning or logos, then searching for God or the source of reality isn't about, looking up at the sky or peering out into deep space with a massive telescope, right?
Exactly. You're not going to find the origin point by smashing atoms in a particle accelerator. The text emphasizes that the greatest human traditions always point inward.
Asking those big questions.
Yes. Asking who am I? Why do I exist? What makes me me? These aren't just fun philosophical musings for a late-night chat. They are the absolute deepest spiritual questions humanity has ever asked.
So the ultimate source isn't hiding at the edge of the cosmos.
No, it resides quietly within the mystery of our own consciousness.
Okay, so let's bring this lofty philosophy down to earth for a second. How does this inward realization actually change how you, the listener, walk through the world today?
It changes everything about how we interact with others.
The text paints this really vivid picture. Think about the stranger you pass on the subway, or that coworker who just drives you completely crazy, or even the person whose politics you entirely disagree with.
We navigate the world so attuned to separation, right? We categorize people constantly.
Well, all the time.
But if we all share the exact same biological legacy, like we talked about with genetics, and we share the exact same existential questions, we are profoundly tethered to one another. The people you dislike the most are sharing the exact same human story. They are searching for the exact same underlying meaning.
It's like finding out that you and your worst enemy are both actually reading different chapters of the exact same autobiography.
That is a perfect analogy.
Once you realize that, the way you view the world has to fundamentally shift. Hating someone else is functionally identical to your left hand attacking your right hand because it thinks it's a separate person.
It demands a complete paradigm shift, and realizing this deep horizontal connection between all humans, this shared biological hardware and conscious software, it naturally forces us to look vertically.
Vertically, like back up the family tree?
Exactly, back up the chain of cause and effect to the very beginning of the timeline. Which brings us to the climax of the deep dive. We have to trace the genealogy of humanity back to its absolute origin point.
Where did the very first consciousness actually come from?
Right.
So if we walk it back in time, you have parents and they have ancestors, leading all the way back to a common human origin. Our physical bodies clearly change across generations, but this stream of consciousness, it flows continuously downward.
And here the text brings back that passage from Acts 17.
Oh, the one about having one blood.
Yes, but beyond just sharing one lineage, the text says God is the creator of heaven and earth, and then it crucially adds this phrase, we are also his offspring.
Wait, offspring? Because offspring specifically means receiving life from a parent. Like an artist builds a sculpture, but the sculpture is just an artifact. It doesn't have the artist's nature.
But offspring implies a continuation of essence.
Right, the text is saying human consciousness isn't just some biological accident, it's a direct inheritance.
It is a direct inheritance. The text suggests that human consciousness reflects something far beyond biological processes. If we follow the genealogy of consciousness to the very end of the line, we hit an ultimate source.
And different traditions just use different words for it.
Exactly. As the text outlines, the Bible calls it God, Buddhism calls it Buddha nature, and philosophy might call it absolute spirit or the noumenon.
The vocabulary changes, but the ultimate question and the ultimate answer are identical.
The search for ultimate truth and the search for your own fundamental nature are indistinguishable. You really can't undertake one without engaging the other.
Okay, so to summarize all of this, we started with the physical hardware of genetics. We dove into the mind-bending weirdness of quantum physics and Kant's philosophy. We explored Buddhist emptiness, and we landed on the biblical logos.
Quite the journey.
Seriously. And through it all, the message is singular. Human consciousness is derived from a divine or ultimate source. Searching for God and searching for your true self have always been the exact same journey.
And I want to leave you with a final thought that builds on that inward focus.
Yeah, please do.
If the ultimate source of reality isn't just floating out there in outer space, but is actually intimately woven into the very fabric of your own consciousness, what does that mean for you tomorrow morning when you look in the mirror?
Oh, wow. Are you just looking at a biological organism getting ready to commute to work? Or are you locking eyes with the universe looking back at itself, waiting to see what you'll create today?
That is heavy and amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep asking those big questions, and we will catch you next time.
If you enjoyed this exploration, consider subscribing and joining us on future journeys. Here, we explore philosophy, science, consciousness, and ancient wisdom, searching for the hidden connections that shape our understanding of reality. Because sometimes, the greatest discoveries are not found in distant galaxies, but within ourselves. Subscribe and continue the journey.